The sound of the slap still rings in my ears. One moment, I was handing my sister a wedding veil. The next, I was standing frozen in a crowded boutique, my cheek burning red. Everyone stared, some shocked, some pretending not to notice, as she pointed at the door and hissed, "Leave. You don't belong here." Humiliation rushed through me like fire. But beneath it was something colder, stronger. Because what she didn't know, what no one in that boutique knew, was that her entire dream wedding, the dress, the venue, the flowers, wasn't being paid for by her. It was being paid for by me. And in that single moment, as I turned and walked out, I decided her fairy tale was about to end. My name is Amanda Carter, and I'm 27 years old. I never thought a day that was supposed to be joyful would turn into the moment my sister completely humiliated me. It all happened during her wedding shopping. We were in this fancy boutique downtown, the kind of place with shiny floors, soft music, and gowns that cost more than most people's cars. My sister, Melissa, was standing on the platform in front of the mirror, twirling in a white dress covered with crystals. Everyone, our mom, the sales lady, even a few cousins, was clapping and telling her how beautiful she looked. Me? I was sitting quietly in a corner, holding her purse, carrying her phone, and waiting for her to bark another order at me. That's how she always treated me, like her personal assistant, not her sister. When the sales lady asked her if she wanted to try another gown, Melissa snapped her fingers at me. "Go get the veil from the rack and hurry up. You're so slow." I swallowed my pride and did what she asked. But when I came back and handed her the veil, she turned around, slapped me across the face, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Just leave. You're ruining my moment." The sting on my cheek wasn't as painful as the sting in my chest. Everyone froze. A couple of people gasped. I felt my face burning with embarrassment, but I held back my tears. She didn't just slap me. She threw me out like I didn't belong. What Melissa didn't know was that the card she was planning to use for all her wedding shopping, the one she was about to pull out for that crystal-covered gown, was mine. For months, she'd been spending freely, thinking our parents were covering the bills. But it was actually me. I was the one paying for the venue, the flowers, even the engagement dinner. And right then, as I walked out of the boutique, I made a decision that would change everything. As soon as I stepped outside the boutique, I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking from the slap, but my mind was crystal clear. I opened the banking app, went straight to my account, and canceled the card. Just like that, every penny she thought was hers was gone. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the cool air. Inside, I could still hear laughter, like nothing had happened. My sister had no idea the ground beneath her was about to collapse. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification. Transaction declined. $20,350 attempted at Bridal Luxe. I smirked. That had to be the gown. I leaned against the glass window and peeked inside. Melissa was at the counter with her shiny dress still draped over her arms, waving the card at the sales lady. "It must be a mistake," I heard her say, her voice sharp. "Run it again. I know there's plenty of money on this card." The sales lady tried again. Another decline. Melissa's face turned red, and she started snapping at everyone. Mom stepped in, whispering something about calling the bank, but the staff weren't patient. They'd seen brides like her before, arrogant, loud, and entitled. "Miss," the manager finally said, his arms crossed, "if you cannot make the payment, we'll need the dress back. We have other clients waiting." Melissa's jaw dropped. She looked like a queen who had just been stripped of her crown in public. She turned to Mom, demanding she fix it. Mom glanced toward the door, probably wondering where I went, but I was already walking away down the street. For the first time in years, I felt a little free. My sister had slapped me, humiliated me, and treated me like trash. But now she was about to face the reality that her entire fairy tale was built on my dime. And this was only the beginning. I hadn't even reached home when my phone started buzzing nonstop. First it was Mom, then Dad, then Melissa herself. I ignored the first 3 calls, but when Mom called again for the 4th time, I finally picked up. Her voice came through sharp and angry. "Amanda, what have you done? Do you know your sister's dress was declined?" She almost fainted in the store. The entire boutique staff was staring at us. I kept my tone calm. That's not my problem, Mom. What do you mean it's not your problem? You embarrassed us in front of everyone. You better call the bank right now and fix it. I laughed bitterly. There's nothing to fix. That was my card. I've been paying for everything. Her dress, her engagement dinner, even the deposit for the venue. Every single thing she's bragging about, it's on my dime. There was silence on the other end. For a second, I thought the call had dropped. Then Mom's voice came back, trembling with rage. You selfish girl. How dare you cancel the card now, right before the wedding? Selfish. I snapped. I've been funding a wedding that isn't even mine. I've been draining my savings while Melissa treats me like her maid. Do you even realize what I've sacrificed? Melissa suddenly grabbed the phone from Mom. Her voice was screeching. You're jealous. That's what this is. You've always been jealous of me. You think ruining my wedding will make you happy? Guess what? It won't. Everyone will still choose me over you. I didn't even bother arguing. I just said, from now on, Melissa, you fund your own wedding. Consider this my final gift to you. Then I hung up. For a few moments, I sat on the bus, staring out the window. My hands were trembling, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was relief. I'd finally stood up for myself. But deep down, I knew this was only the start. Because without my money, my sister's perfect wedding was about to fall apart piece by piece. The next morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from the wedding venue. Payment overdue. Your reservation will be canceled within 48 hours if balance is not received. I almost laughed out loud. They had no idea that I wasn't paying another cent. I deleted the message, knowing it would soon land in Melissa's inbox instead. By noon, the calls started again. Melissa's voice was shrill, almost panicked. Amanda, the venue says the check bounced. What did you do? I spoke slowly, almost enjoying the calmness in my voice compared to her chaos. I didn't do anything. I just stopped paying, that's all. She screeched into the phone. You can't do this. The wedding is in 2 weeks. The caterer, the flowers, the photographer, they're all expecting money. That's your problem now, not mine, I said and hung up. Later that evening, word began spreading through the family group chat. Relatives who had already booked flights were asking if the wedding was still happening. A few even mentioned hearing from the caterer that their contract had been canceled. Apparently, Melissa's check to them had bounced too. By the third day, her fiancé's family got involved. I heard through a cousin that they had a heated discussion at his house. They had believed Melissa's parents were funding everything. Now, they discovered not a single bill was paid by them. It was all me. The whispers began. If Amanda was the one paying, what does that say about Melissa? That evening, I got a text from her fiancé himself. Amanda, is it true you've been paying for the wedding? Melissa told us her parents were covering everything. I stared at the screen, debating. Then I typed back one word. Yes. I didn't need to explain further. The truth was enough to plant doubt in his mind. And I had a feeling that doubt would soon explode into something much bigger. 2 days later, I got a call I didn't expect. It was from Jacob, Melissa's fiancé. His voice was calm, but I could hear the strain beneath it. Amanda, he said, I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. Did you really pay for all of this? The venue, the catering, the engagement dinner? I didn't hesitate. Yes, Jacob. Every bit of it. Melissa never paid a dime. My parents didn't either. It was all me. There was silence for a moment. Then he sighed. She told me her family was handling everything. She said money wasn't an issue. Do you know how humiliating it was to find out in front of my parents that none of the payments were real? I could hear the anger in his voice now. I trusted her, Amanda. But lying about money this big, it makes me wonder what else she's lied about. Before I could answer, Melissa grabbed the phone from him. Her voice was sharp, desperate. Jacob, don't listen to her. She's jealous. She's trying to destroy us. She's always hated me. But Jacob didn't sound convinced anymore. Melissa, enough. I saw the receipts. Amanda isn't lying. You told me your parents were paying, and now I find out it was your sister's savings. How could you think that was okay? I was going to pay her back. Melissa cried. You don't understand. She's making this worse than it is. But Jacob's voice turned cold. What I understand is that we were about to start a marriage built on lies. If you can't be honest about something as important as this, how can I believe anything else you've told me? Melissa begged, shouted, and cried, but Jacob had already made up his mind. By the end of that call, the engagement was over. I sat there on my bed, phone still in my hand, stunned. Not because I was sad, but because it finally hit me. Her entire fairy tale was collapsing, and I hadn't even lifted a finger except to cancel a card. The truth alone was enough to bring it all down. The wedding day arrived, but instead of excitement, the air was heavy with tension. Relatives who had flown in from out of town were whispering in the lobby of the reception hall, confused about why nothing was set up. No flowers, no catering, no decorations, just empty tables and a bare stage. I walked in quietly, just to see it for myself. Melissa was in the corner, pacing like a storm about to explode. Her dress wasn't the crystal-covered gown she had dreamed of. She'd been forced to rent a plane one last minute. Her makeup was smudged from crying, and her voice was hoarse from shouting at everyone. When she spotted me, her face twisted with fury. You ruined everything. This is all your fault. Her scream turned heads, and suddenly all eyes were on us. But instead of pitying her, the relatives looked at me with curiosity, waiting for an explanation. So, I gave them one, calmly and clearly. Melissa has been living a fantasy. She told everyone our parents were funding this wedding, but it was me paying all along. When she slapped me and treated me like dirt, I stopped. And this, I gestured to the empty hall, is the result. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests shook their heads in disappointment. A few even muttered, "Serves her right." Melissa's face went pale. She turned to her parents, expecting them to defend her. But even they were silent, embarrassed beyond words. Then came the final blow. Jacob, her ex-fiancé, walked in with his parents. He wasn't dressed for a wedding. He was dressed in a crisp black suit, his expression cold. I came here to tell everyone the truth myself, he said loudly. The wedding is off. Melissa lied to me, to my family, and to all of you. I won't marry someone who builds her life on deceit. The room was silent except for Melissa's sobs. I stood there, feeling a strange mix of relief and strength. For years, I had been the quiet one, the one who let her walk all over me. But now, everyone finally saw the truth. Her dream wedding was gone, her fiancé was gone, and her reputation was gone, too. After Jacob and his parents walked out, the reception hall turned into chaos. Guests began leaving in groups, shaking their heads, whispering about how embarrassing it all was. Some even demanded their travel expenses back, muttering about how they had wasted time and money on a wedding that never happened. Melissa collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands, sobbing. Mom rushed to her side, trying to comfort her, while Dad turned toward me with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. This is on you, Amanda, he snapped. If you hadn't pulled your stunt, none of this would have happened. I stood tall, refusing to flinch.
No, Dad.
This happened because Melissa and both of you took advantage of me. I paid for months without a word. I sacrificed my savings, my future, to cover for her lies. And what did I get in return? A slap in the face. Literally. The relatives nearby nodded. They had heard everything, and I could see in their eyes that they agreed with me. For once, I wasn't the one being shamed. Mom's voice cracked as she pleaded, Amanda, please, just fix this. Pay the bills. Help your sister. We can't recover from this disgrace. I almost laughed.
No, Mom.
I'm done being the family wallet. You call me selfish when I stopped, but let's be honest. Who's really selfish here? The one who paid for everything quietly, or the ones who used me like a bank account and never once said thank you? They had no answer. Right then, I made my choice. From this day forward, I'm cutting all financial ties. No more bills, no more payments, no more favors. You'll all have to stand on your own 2 feet. And Melissa? She can learn what it's like to pay for her own dreams. The hall fell silent. For the first time in years, I felt powerful, not because I had destroyed anything, but because I had finally stopped being afraid to stand up for myself. Melissa's sobs grew louder, but I didn't look back. I walked out of that empty reception hall with my head high, leaving her shattered fairy tale behind me. The weeks after the ruined wedding were strangely quiet. For once, my phone wasn't blowing up with demands for money. Instead, it buzzed with messages from relatives, some offering support, others gossiping about how Melissa had become a laughingstock. I heard she tried to patch things up with Jacob, but he had already moved on. His family wanted nothing to do with her. Without the wedding, without the venue, without the groom, Melissa stayed home, bitter and humiliated. The girl who once bragged about being the princess of the family now avoided even going to the grocery store because she couldn't handle the stares. As for my parents, they were forced to face reality. The bills they used to hand off to me were now piling up on their own tables: the mortgage, utilities, credit cards. They were drowning in them. And every time they tried to guilt me back into helping, I simply repeated the same line: "You'll have to figure it out yourselves." At first, they called me cruel. But over time, even they stopped calling as much. It was as if my silence finally taught them what my words never could: that I was no longer their safety net. Meanwhile, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I was able to keep my paycheck for myself. I started saving again, little by little. I even signed up for a cooking class, something I'd always wanted but could never afford because my money was always being drained by someone else's needs. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment stirring a pot of pasta, I realized something important. I hadn't just canceled a card that day in the boutique. I had canceled years of being walked on, dismissed, and taken advantage of. Melissa lost her wedding, her fiancé, and her pride. My parents lost their free ride. And me? I gained my freedom. And honestly, that was the best ending I could have ever asked for. A month later, I ran into one of my aunts at the grocery store. She smiled warmly and said, "Amanda, I just want you to know we're proud of you. It's not easy standing up to family, but you did the right thing." Her words stayed with me long after we parted ways. For years, I had carried the weight of everyone else's happiness on my shoulders, thinking that keeping the peace was more important than speaking up. But peace bought with silence is never real. It's just control disguised as love. Melissa still hasn't spoken to me since that day. My parents keep their distance, too, their pride too wounded to admit the truth. And honestly, that's fine because I've learned that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect. Now, every time I check my bank account and see my savings growing, every time I cook dinner in my own quiet apartment, every time I wake up without the burden of someone else's bills, I feel stronger. Looking back, that slap in the boutique could have broken me. Instead, it freed me. And as I move forward with my life, I know one thing for certain. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't payback. It's walking away and letting them choke on the consequences of their own choices.